There are some things that are done right now that 10 years from now are going to be considered wrong and evil. Is there such a thing as sin? Okay, this is a basic question that for some of you, you're rolling your eyes because you're like, duh, everyone knows that there's sin. But others of you thinking, no, there's no such thing as sin. But here's the reality, there is sin. And I know that because everyone knows that there is right and there's wrong. Everybody has a sense of what is right, what is wrong. Now, I say that because even if some of you don't believe in God, don't believe the Bible, or think the Bible is super outdated, you know that there are right and wrong. In our society today, we have clear standards of what is right and what's wrong. You should recycle. You shouldn't cough on someone when you have COVID. And you should definitely not be racist. Okay? We have some clear standards in our society. And in fact, our society has such strict standards with it that if you said something when you were a teenager, when you were in high school, maybe you tweeted something, you could lose your job 15, 20 years later just because someone discovered that tweet. We cancel people. We are worse than the Puritans. And by the way, Puritans were pretty awesome. Maybe that's another video. But what I'm going to say is our society ostracizes people. It kicks people out. It puts a scarlet letter on them if they are racist, if they were assaulting or said something awful to someone who's younger or to a woman or to someone of a different skin color. Okay, our society is very clear that this is right, this is wrong. And you might say, oh, well, that's different than the Bible. Well, yes, it is. And that is a problem. But the problem is that society is one of the worst things for determining what's right or wrong. But that's what everybody thinks should determine what's right or wrong today. Society. That we should all come together and decide what's right or wrong. But here are just a few things that society has said that are okay at one point very recently in history. Things like racism was okay. Things like slavery was good in our society because it built up our economy, right? Things like female genital mutilation in some societies is acceptable. What about child brides? Okay, just because society says something's okay doesn't mean it's okay, because those things that I just named are pure evil. They're sinful. Why do I say that? Not because of society standards, but because of God's standards. You see, society changes all the time. Even just last year, it was okay to read your kids Dr. Seuss. And today, I'm not so sure, right? Oh my gosh, what about the stereotypes? I put on Disney movies, the classics. And there's a little disclaimer at the beginning, if you're watching Disney Plus, with my 4.5-year-old, about these movies like Snow White and Pinocchio. And is there good reason for that? Maybe. But what we're seeing in our society is that morality is changing all the time. And guess what? There are some things that are done right now that 10 years from now are going to be considered wrong and evil. 100 years from now, we are going to be the worst people who ever walked the face of the earth, just like what we think about slaveholders or people that had child brides. The reason why we don't think that way is because of chronological snobbery. But the reality, as C.S. Lewis called it, the reality is that there is right or wrong, and we all know it. So therefore, we need a better standard than what society says. We need something in our heart, and that is based on, yes, God. See, God has put inside of our hearts a conscience, and our conscience tells us that there's right or wrong. And guess what? God put that in our hearts, and we need it to testify that God has said what is right and what is wrong, what is sin and what is not sin. In fact, in Romans 2:18, it says that all people have that in their hearts. Paul writes that they show that the requirements of the law, God's law, are written on their hearts, their consciences also bearing witness, and their thoughts sometimes accusing them, and at other times even defending them. We have a conscience, and it testifies that there is a God who has established what is right and what is wrong. We all know it deep in our hearts. There is such thing as sin. But here's the interesting thing, that is only step one when it comes to right and wrong and morality. Yes, that's right. Knowing that there is a such thing as sin is just step one. And we're going to talk about what step 2 through 4 are as you continue with us through a series that I'm doing, a 4-part series starting this week. So this is week 1. Make sure you subscribe to these videos on YouTube, that you like them, that you share them, that you comment on them, wherever you're watching. And we'll be back next week as we talk about, well, what's the next step beyond right or wrong? Because yes, there is a next step. We'll see you next week.